What if the reason that you're not getting grants is not the grant itself or even writing the grant? Today, we're going to talk about 4 mistakes that nonprofits make that prevent good organizations from getting the funding that they need. This is the Nonprofit Missionary Podcast. My name is Ken McQuiller, founder of Nonprofit Missionary. We exist to help support faith-based nonprofits in their grant writing journey. So whether you're starting out or whether you need extra support to kind of take you to that next level, we got your back so that you can focus on reaching people for the kingdom of God. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we get into that, I just want to say that this podcast is sponsored by the $97 Jumpstart grant writing package that we offer here at Nonprofit Missionary. It's a 1-hour session with me where we will go over a little bit more about your organization and then identify some fundraising tips and tricks, as well as identify a few of grants that you can start out with, so that as you are starting this grant writing journey, you have a strategy, you have a couple of different ways to get funding, and you're not just chasing random grants. So if you're interested in that, hit me up at nonprofitmissionary@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Nonprofit Missionary. Love to connect with you and get you started on your grant writing journey. But let's talk about a few mistakes that I feel like I see a lot in the grant writing world, especially with how nonprofits pursue grants. Mistake number 1. A lot of nonprofits are just chasing random grants. Now, random grants kind of seems like, shouldn't you just go after anything? Yes and no. What I mean by this is I feel like a lot of nonprofits just start Googling grants, or maybe they have something like Instrumental or the Foundation Center, and they just start going down the list of every single foundation and send grant application there, send a letter here, a letter there. And while I think it's good to broaden your scope, I do understand this. Your time as a nonprofit leader, as a fundraiser, is limited. And I think you have to be intentional about who you're actually reaching out to. So when I do grant research, because I've done this for several organizations, I don't just pick random grants that I see. I think about it and I look and I do research on who it is, how they're a fit, and everything like that. Because sometimes, even though the softwares are great, I've used Instrumental before, I've used the Foundation Center before, even Googling or using ChatGPT can work. However, it doesn't sometimes give you a full picture. Let me give a few examples. So, as if you haven't seen anything of mine before, I started out this grant writing journey through a ministry that I still serve at today, an after-school program. So a lot of my knowledge and a lot of my examples typically come from there. So let's say you are an after-school program and you're just looking for random grants that serve education, because that makes sense. You do education and you're looking for grants. It seems like a good fit. But then you write a grant application to a foundation that only gives to the local school district, or they only give to adult education, they don't give to childhood education. If you're not doing the additional research, then you're just chasing whatever thing you might see, and it's wasting your time. It's killing your productivity. So what I want to suggest to you is, as you go about researching grants, actually do research on every single one. The Foundation Center, I think, does a great job of breaking down how much their gifts are. It also can tell you who gets grants from where typically. Instrumental does that as well. But in both areas, you have to be willing to look for it. You can't just be like, oh, I think they're a match because they say they serve education. Do some research, check, especially if you're a faith-based nonprofit. You want to make sure that the foundation even supports faith-based nonprofits. I think most will, so long as you don't you're not just exclusively serving Christians, or if it's not church service typically, but I think it's important to do that research. So if you're looking at ABC Foundation and they've given $1 million in grants, who have they given those dollars to? Because you don't just want to know, okay, do they actually give to your cause area, but what type of organizations do they give to? Do they only give to the big players in your city? Do they only give to certain people, places, things? Because sometimes what can happen is, as you're doing research, the algorithm that they're using is more based on this. They give this amount of dollars to this cause area, but maybe they only give to that specific organization. Maybe they used to give in that area, but they don't anymore. You have to do the deep dive. One of the things I really like doing is checking their 990. Every foundation has to have a 990 in order to exist. Therefore, you can look at it and you could see, okay, so these are the people that they gave to. This is the dollar amount, because that's also important. You don't want to request $10,000 when the max say is $2,500. That's a good, easy way to get rejected. So I think when we chase random grants, we don't have that intentionality and that purpose that this grant is going for this program for this amount of money. And we're just throwing something out and hoping it sticks. Have a strategy. If you don't know how to figure that out, that's where you can sign up for the Grant Writing Jumpstart package, and we will work with you to try to get you a short list, at least to start out with, so that as you're going about this grant writing journey, as you're starting out, you're not starting with just trying to find something out there. You have a plan, you have a strategy, you have a purpose behind each of these places. Also with that is mistake number 2. Maybe you're sending grant applications out blindly. What do I mean by that? You're just filling out an application, sending it, and then hoping it gets funded. And while that could be fine, and while there are some places where that works tremendously, there are also places that want you to build that relationship first. Before you even submit a grant application, I want to encourage you to talk to the foundation first. Some places require it. Some places won't even let you fill out an application unless you call them ahead of time. Some places won't let you even fill out the application itself without talking to them and getting the code. I think it's important to have that forethought to contact the person ahead of time. See what you can do. And once you do, I think it could just make it can make a significant difference. So please contact the people ahead of time. As you, be organized as you do this research. Write down not just the name, but the contact, not just the name of the foundation, but the contact information. Log when you tried to reach out to them, because not everyone will get back to you, and that's fine. But what you want to do is you want to try to make that effort to say, hey, I want to talk to you about what we're doing. Because I think what also can happen is maybe there's something you just don't know about the foundation, and out of nowhere, they could be like, hey, what are you doing? We're never going to fund you. But then you apply 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. And every single time, it's an hour that you could have spent dedicated to something else. 5 hours, however long the grant might take. And I think when we take the time to say, we are going to be intentional about reaching out to the person ahead of time, we are going to try to build a relationship so that it's not just application number 548123, that it is, oh, this is Ken from the Meeting Place Learning Center, and these are the great things that they do. I think it can make a difference. It's the other thing with it, with reaching out ahead of time, is your application can only say so much. Most of them have some kind of character limit, whether it's 500 characters, 3,000 characters, whatever it might be. You can only say but so much in that amount of time. And by talking to them ahead of time, you give them a little bit more context as they are reviewing your application. Also, you can talk to them ahead of time so that you can figure out what is needed, what is not needed, what are some of the parameters as you fill out this application. I think those things can also be just as valuable. So, please reach out ahead of time. Make sure that you are doing your due diligence to reach out as best as possible. Like I said, there are some people where they won't reply back. I've had some where they said, they said it in a much more courteous way than this, but don't contact us unless, don't contact us. We'll see your application as the first contact. And then if we need anything, we'll reach out. So that's also a thing. And I think our biggest, as the grant writer, as a nonprofit, our biggest thing is to try to reach out to the people ahead of time. Because we don't want to waste time. We want to be intentional about how we're using our time, because any time wasted towards grant writing that we could be using in other areas could be impacting lives that we're trying to change and transform. So we want to be intentional about our time. And that leads to my third point. I feel like sometimes people use grants to distract them from other fundraising endeavors and opportunities. When you look at grants from a big picture scale, and you're like, okay, I've seen organizations get $25,000 in one hit, $50,000 in one hit. And when you're a small nonprofit, that's a significant amount of money. And you're looking at it and you're like, if I can just hit one of these grants, that's great. But I think sometimes it also distracts us from the actual individual fundraising that will help grow the organization concurrently. Sometimes we think that just by applying for random grants that we're doing the best with fundraising. And sometimes, yes, that's necessary and I think it's important. But I think sometimes people look at grants as a way to distract them from doing the other fundraising, reaching out to people that could be just as impactful, if not more, in their organization. Don't let grants distract you from the big thing. I had a post a couple weeks ago about this, and I'll elaborate it more on here. I was cleaning our church space. I was vacuuming, kind of just doing my thing, and I kept thinking about this concept that we would hear all the time in Bible school. And I don't have anything wrong with it, just for the record. But a lot of people would say something along the lines of, if your pastor isn't cleaning toilets, then he is not worthy to be a pastor, because a pastor has to have a servant's heart. And I agree. Pastors need to have that ability to say, I'm willing to step in and do whatever it takes to make the kingdom of God work. If that's cleaning a toilet, great. If that's preaching, great. If that's talking to the homeless person on the street, great. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And having that servant's heart. Jesus washed feet. Dirty, stinky, smelly feet. Worse than what we see now. And I understand that concept, but also I think sometimes we use stuff like cleaning toilets to distract us from the things that God is really calling us to do. And sometimes it's not necessarily toilets, but it's those small administrative things that take up so much of our time and so much of our space that when it comes to the actual things that we need to do to grow the organization, we're like, we don't have time for it. Let's say you're stuck at your computer working on a social media post, editing it. And then the end of the day comes and you're like, oh, I was supposed to reach out to that person, but I'll just do it tomorrow. Or we're stuck managing emails and getting stuck in the minutia of what we're doing versus trying to work on our organization instead of in it and grow in our fundraising strategies and try to build relationships with our high-level donors and our volunteers and trying to build those relationships so that they can continue to take ownership of the organization. It's not just all on you or all on your staff. And I think sometimes, whether it is with writing grants, whether it is with those small administrative tasks, we tend to distract ourselves very easily from the bigger picture things that we are called to do. So I just want to encourage you to be careful. I want to encourage you to make sure that you're not using grants to distract you from the other fundraising that God has called you to do. Yes, the toilet needs to be clean. Yes, emails need to be answered. And God has called you to lead this aspect of your organization, whether you're talking about fundraising, whether you're talking as an executive director, everything. God has called you to be the person that's taking charge and to do the big picture things. If you're spending too much time on something that shouldn't take that long, either, I think one of two things are happening. Either one, like it should be delegated to somebody else, or you're using it as a procrastination tool to not do what you need to do. It's very easy to go down the grant writing rabbit hole and to be like, I'm gonna get all these grants. And then like sometimes it just doesn't happen. And it's not because the grant quality isn't good. It's not because you messed up something. Sometimes it's just simply because it's just not your time or it's not a good fit. But what I want to just encourage you with is make sure that as you're doing grant writing, that it makes sense for you and it's not just something that's distracting you from the bigger picture. I read recently this book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, and one of the things that they talk about is the concept of the whirlwind. And that's like everything that you need to do to keep your organization running, whether that's administering programming, whether you're talking about like HR, communications, whatever it might be. And what happens with a lot of leaders is they get so stuck in the whirlwind of running the organization that they never take a step back and say, how can we grow this? And how can we have a strategy to improve our systems and everything that we do? And I think as nonprofits, sometimes that whirlwind is grant writing. And it's like, we need money, let's just try to get it this way. As opposed to taking a step back and trying to build relationships, trying to build and disciple your board to help build stronger relationships with everybody else. So don't let distraction get in the way of what God is calling you to do. And if grants are getting in your way, it's okay to take a step back from trying to write more grants and just write grants and all of that. Sometimes it's about building the relationships first, and then grants can come afterwards. The last thing, and then we'll talk a little Confessions of a Missionary. I want to get back to some AI things that I thought were interesting. I think the last mistake a lot of nonprofits make is that they write the same exact grant application for every single organization. Now, I do think it's important to have a master grant template. I have that. I use that for all of my clients. I've used it several times and it's been very effective. And it can be very beneficial as you're building and writing this grant application. And it's a template. It's not everything that I do every single time. Once again, this kind of goes back to talking to the organization ahead of time. You have to capture what makes that organization tick. Are they more like community oriented? Are they more children oriented? Are they more we love our city oriented? And this can only be really understood if you either have a relationship with the foundation or if you're really looking at their website and seeing what it is about them that really makes them tick. And I think once we have that, that's when we can really take that step forward and be like, I know how to write this so that it shows that we're a better fit than just writing our generic stuff. Because when you're writing a grant, you're not writing it for you, you're writing it for them. And I think sometimes when we're writing it, we're thinking like, these are all the things that we're awesome about, which is great. Yes, brag about yourself, but brag about yourself in their language. Make sure that you're using those buzzwords that really hit home for them, using those ideas and that perspective that they see, okay, not only did they do their research, but I see how they're a fit, and these are the great things that they're doing. Use a grant application template. Have that, because that saves you a lot of time. It saves you a lot of headache. Writing a grant from scratch can be very daunting. In fact, if you have a master grant application and connect it to an AI source, it can help you to develop the grant quicker. And if you need help with that, nonprofitmissionary@gmail.com. I have a software called Grant OS that can help you build that quickly. However, don't just use the grant application and that's it. Take it and alter it so that it fits their perspective, so that when they read it, they hear that you're a good fit. So if you've sent out 70 grant applications and they keep getting rejected, it could be because you're not necessarily writing the grant for them, you're just writing it for you. And it's hard. I understand that it's hard. In fact, I totally get it, because when I first started this grant writing process, I saw the thing of statement of need, and I literally thought that they were asking me, what do I need? So I wrote about how our organization is looking to grow funding and all of these different things. Now I know that's not what it's looking for. And it helps to have that perspective of, oh, I didn't know what I didn't know back then. And when probably someone read it, they probably laughed, wow, this person has no idea what they're talking about. But I do think it's important to at least have that structure in place, the grant application, so that as you continue to build up and hone your skills and tweak what you need to tweak, I think it can be beneficial and it can help you grow in your grant writing. So have a master grant application, but make sure you're tailoring each aspect of what they're doing, because you're not writing it for you, you're writing it for the foundation you're doing. So I hope you take these 4 mistakes to heart and you're like, okay, I know what I need to do and I know how I need to improve. Whether it's I need to reach out to the people, I need to be more intentional about how I'm doing research, I need to be more intentional with my time and not just waste it on grant applications that aren't going to go anywhere. I need to be intentional about how I'm writing my grants to different foundations. And I think once we do that, we can start to see that momentum starting and the grants to start getting funded more. And therefore, it's not just about the money. It's about using those funds to help change lives for the kingdom of God. And I think once we get there, that's when we know we've won. So I hope you take those to heart. And if you need support, nonprofitmissionary@gmail.com. Let's get into some confessions of a missionary. I have a follow-up to our AI video. The video itself wasn't AI, just for the record. Our video about AI for nonprofits in 2026. I had recently watched a TED Talk from this guy who is a creator on social media. He runs the page There I Ruined It, where he does different parodies of popular songs and mashes up crazy stuff. So I think one that he gave as an example was a song from P. Diddy sung in the tune of this old country song. A lot of lighthearted, funny type of stuff. And he gave a TED Talk on AI with music and talks about some of the ways that he creates music via AI, and then also talks about some of the nuances behind it. I want to give this quote that I thought was interesting, if I can find it. This quote is this is a substitute for human skill, intelligence, and soul. They reduce the expression of music to a mathematical system. You hear that, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what AI is doing to music. That was said by John Philip Sousa about the phonograph back in 1906. And he was showing that, like, whenever something new comes along, that's typically the thought. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, and this is why I wanted to follow up with it, with this concept, And that's the idea of what is your intention with AI? And he said, when you're talking about artists using AI, if their intention is to make music and improve on the music that they're doing, then it probably shouldn't be a problem. But we also know that's not everyone's intention. Consider the people that are just putting together AI albums in the hopes that they can put it on Spotify and it monetizes for them. Or the people that are putting like crazy AI videos as though they're real and trying to get enough views so that they can get it monetized. And I think when we look at it from that perspective, I think it helps us, and not just in the music space, but I think also in the nonprofit space. What is your intention in using AI? Is it to help save you time on administrative tasks, or are you using it to try to get out of the things that you don't want to do? And I think when we look at our intentions and as we use and experiment with different AI tools, I think we need to have that perspective. We need to ask ourselves, what is our intention with it? Are we trying to make our lives better? Or are we trying to, for lack of a better term, take shortcuts? Are we trying to be deceitful in how we're doing stuff? And I can't answer that question for you. That's something that you'll have to answer yourself. But I think as you're looking at different things, as you're experimenting with different tools, make sure that you have that question in the back of your head. What is the intention behind it? So, with that said, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. We launch these videos pretty much every Wednesday. So, until next time, stay focused, stay funded. God bless you.